Jeeva Bhavana. We are a Pune-based organization, and our work is pan-India. Our mission is to study the devastating effects of animal agriculture in India, particularly in respect to environment, health, and economy, and to assist farmers in their transition to organic, plant-based agriculture in order to create a sovereign and sustainable food system, where farmers are well compensated for the work they do and where all life is respected and thrives. Our work is inspired by a US-based organization, Climate Healers, led by Dr. Shailesh Rao. And two of the founders of Jeeva Bhavana, Julie and I, initially started our work under the banner of Climate Healers of Pune and organized the Pune Health and Sustainability Conference in November-December 2019, which was also presided by Dr. Shailesh Rao. This event was the first of its kind in India and was a huge success. However, our urge to do India-centered work led us to form Jeeva Bhavana in January 2020. So though we are very much in our nascent stage, we are taking long strides to counter the non-stop destructive developments taking place at a super fast pace. We have organized talks, health camps, workshops, and film screenings to educate the public about the health and environmental benefits of adopting a plant-based diet so that customers boost the demand for healthy organic food, instigating a positive feedback loop for farmers and encouraging others to follow suit. Though the lockdown has obliged us to stop our groundwork, it has compelled us to reach to the public in other ways, most notably like this event via the internet. I'd like to introduce the co-founders and directors of Jeeva Bhavana briefly. First of all, I'd like to mention that our contribution in this organization and today is not as experts, but as conscious citizens who have been doing independent research on these vital topics. First, I'd like to introduce Julie Wayne, who is today's presenter. She is an American-French photographer and environmentalist and an animal rights activist. Although her origin is non-Indian, Julie is functionally an Indian. She has traveled extensively in southern India and researched and documented traditional potters in Tamil Nadu for over a decade. Being closely connected to India for over 20 years now, Julie has made it a mission to help create sustainable and self-reliant lives for Indian farmers. And we truly value her as our team member for her extensive global study about the impacts of animal agriculture and for her dedication to study the impacts of animal agriculture in India. Sanjeev Naik, our third partner in crime, is doing the slideshow and moderating with me. I am Madhavi Kolte, and both of us, Sanjeev has actually done his software engineering, and I have been a sculptor. And after we realized the urgency of the situation, we have moved away from our professions to volunteer with environmental organizations. Both of us have done our course with the Ecological Society about sustainable living and nature conservation, because of which we understood this subject better. And our mission now is to devote our efforts towards informing others, especially our fellow environmentalists, about the urgent need to switch to a plant-based diet to mitigate the worst effects of climate change and environmental destruction. So before we begin, I just have a few instructions for you all. Kindly keep yourself on mute and turn your camera off while we do the presentation. And you may turn your cameras on when we start the question and answer session. You will get your turn to ask the question if you want to speak it out, or you can type the question in the chat box and we'll make sure your question is addressed. Though we have mentioned that the session is up to 10 p.m., we will conclude only after all the questions are addressed. And we are also going to share some very important links in the chat box for your reference for more elaborate understanding. Because of lack of time, we will not be able to get into too much of details for each slide, and you may want to do more research about the information we have searched. So you could do that. And of course, we will be sharing a recording of this meeting on our Facebook page and on our website. We have recently launched our website with considerable amount of information for the Indian audience. And we will be updating it regularly. So we request you all to visit it regularly and post your questions. We'll be glad to address them. So now I hand over to Julie.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Madhavi. And it's great to see, I'm not seeing you all, of course, but to know that there's so many people who are interested in this subject. As Madhavi said, it's a subject that is of such importance, but unfortunately, it's not very popular. People really don't want to talk about this. And that is why we're doing this today, because we really feel that the most important thing is that people are informed about how many things animal agriculture is responsible for so many environmental problems. But we want to focus today on climate change. Sanjeev, can I have the first slide, please? So I'm not sure if any of you or many of you saw this last November, but it sort of made a buzz. It was published in the journal Bioscience in November 2019, last year. And there were more than 11,000 scientists from 153 countries and across all disciplines. They all declared a climate emergency, warning of untold suffering due to the climate crisis without urgent action. The statement identifies 6 primary areas for intervention that impact society's well-being and biodiversity. And one of those 6 is a global transition to plant-based diets, which will, as the paper states, improve human health, significantly lower greenhouse gas emissions, free up croplands, and do all sorts of things, and especially release grazing land to support different climate solutions, very natural climate solutions, such as reforestation, afforestation, and rewilding. Next slide, please. So this comes from a study. This statement comes from a study. It was the conclusion of a study that was published in 2018. It was published in the journal Science. It was the most comprehensive analysis to date of the damage farming does to the planet. This research was unique because it looked at 40,000 farms in 119 countries, and it covered 40 food products that represent 90%. That's a lot of numbers here, but just let's say a huge number of farms in a huge number of countries. And it covered 40 food products that represent 90% of all that is eaten in the world. And it assessed the full impact of those foods on our environment, like land use, greenhouse gas emissions, water use, and things like that. Now, the leader of the person who led the research, his name is Dr. Joseph Poor. He's from the University of Oxford. And he concluded that a vegan diet is probably the single best way to reduce your impact on planet Earth. Not just greenhouse gases, but global acidification, eutrophication, land use, and water use. And he goes on to say that agriculture is a sector that spans the multitude of environmental problems. And really, it is animal products that are responsible for so much of this degradation. Next slide, please. So this is going to be a heavy-duty slide here. Sanjeev, there's something on the bottom of the slide. I'm not sure if we can get rid of that. But I'll just go on as we get rid of this little glitch in the system. So as we've just discovered, the study before that I spoke about told us animal agriculture is the human activity that runs the gamut of environmental damage. And that even if we did our very, very best to drastically reduce or even eliminate the use of fossil fuels and reduced our waste to as little as possible and did all of these other types of actions, if we didn't change our food choices, we're still heading for big, big trouble. So on this list, you see, there is a list of all sorts of environmental damage that animal agriculture is responsible for. But we're going to concentrate just on the first one that says that between 51 to 87% of greenhouse gases can be, animal agriculture is responsible for that number. So why are we paying attention to that? Why is it so important to talk about greenhouse gases? Well, if we want to talk about climate change, and that is really what the topic today is about. So if we really want to talk about climate change, we have to talk about global warming, because that's the main driver of climate change. And if we want to talk about global warming, we must look at greenhouse gases, because greenhouse gases are the main drivers of rising temperatures. As temperatures rise, the whole planet warms up. And as the temperatures rise and the planet warms up, then not only do we have higher temperatures all over, but then we have all of the other devastating effects of climate change, more droughts, more floods, you know, very, very crazy weather phenomena and things like that. So let's look at some numbers now. And we're going to be putting in the chat box, as Madhavi said, we're going to be putting some studies and things like that in the chat box, because I'm not going to be able to talk at length about them. But I will tell you the main points. So in 2006, the FAO, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, published a report, and it was called Livestock's Long Shadow. We go back and forth always to this study. It was the first really, really big study where they estimated that animal agriculture is responsible for 18% of global greenhouse emissions. But then a couple of years later, there was a new study, and this was done by two researchers, Robert Goodland and Jeff Anhang. And excuse me, their study was called Livestock and Climate Change. And it basically put greenhouse gases not at 18%, not at 20%, but at 51%. So what is there, why is there such a big discrepancy between what the FAO found and what Goodland and Anhang found? Well, there's many, many reasons that there was such a huge difference between this estimation, but the main reason is because they really took into account the devastating effect of methane. So methane is a small amount of greenhouse gases compared to CO2. We've all heard about CO2. Everyone's talking about carbon emissions. But people don't talk as much about methane, mainly because it's a small part of the global greenhouse gases. However, methane, though relatively small in the calculations, is almost 100 times more, has 100 times more heating potential than CO2. So that means that it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. But one of the other things about that's very interesting about methane is that it has also a much shorter half-life than CO2. And that just means that when it's released in the atmosphere, though it's very powerful, it really loses its power every year by a lot. So in other words, this is the interesting thing about methane, is if we stop putting methane into the atmosphere, then we can actually lower temperatures very, very quickly, which is very different with CO2, because CO2 has a very, very long half-life, meaning that it stays in the atmosphere and creates these greenhouse gases that basically trap in the heat. So when we know that 37% of human-induced methane comes from animal agriculture, well, the math is very, very simple. If we take away 37% of our methane emissions, then we're basically going to be able to mitigate the devastating effects of climate change, of global warming. So then earlier this year, so that was 51%. And then earlier this year, Dr. Sailesh Rao, who is the founder and director of Climate Healers, he published a white paper. Now, a white paper is basically an authoritative study of all of the studies that exist. It's not a scientific study, but it takes and synthesizes all of the studies that have actually taken place until that time. And his white paper is called Animal Agriculture is the Leading Cause of Climate Change. Now, his calculations put animal agriculture at 87% of global emissions, 87%. So it's quite a complicated, it's very mathematical and stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that here, but we will put the link, of course, of the white paper into the chat box, so you can definitely read it. But one of the other things that's really, really interesting about his study is that it shows how also a global transition to a plant-based economy has the potential to sequester such extraordinary amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere that we can return the levels, the CO2 levels, the greenhouse gas levels, to a very, very safe zone. All the while, we can regenerate our soils and vegetation and restore biodiversity and heal the climate. Next slide, please. So these numbers, I wanted to show you, this is just a graphic so that we see, before our very eyes. Can everybody please be on mute? Yeah, okay. So thank you. So in this, we see the slide, and it's a graphic image of this. We're all concentrating on CO2, CO2, CO2. And I'm not saying that CO2 is not important. But when we look at the difference between the greenhouse gas emissions that are caused by all of the transport put together, that means all of our automobiles and lorries and ships and trains and planes. And then we compare it with 51%, so that's Goodwin and Anning. But even if we just compare it with the 18% of the FAO, we see that the animal agriculture is just really the thing that we have to concentrate on. Next slide, please. So there's somebody who's not on mute. I'm very, very sorry. Can you please, the person who's not on mute, can you please mute your, thank you. Okay. So this slide is another one that's going to be a little heavy duty with numbers, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but it's also something extremely important when we want to look at the sort of the well-rounded idea of animal agriculture being the leading cause of climate change. So this is a chart that was made out of the data from the 2019 IPCC report. It was a special report. IPCC means the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So they published this special report where they showed how critical land use is in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and, of course, other environmental deteriorations. But they also showed how land use can actually be used as a solution to climate change. So in this chart, if we see from the bottom up, we're talking about, again, this is the data given by the IPCC. So we see, this is the land use, the global land use of ice-free land, how all of the Earth's land is being used this moment. So we see at the very bottom, there's only 1% that goes for all of our human habitation and constructions and things like that. And then we go all the way up, and let's just look at this big orange rectangle there. So that orange rectangle is 37%. 37% of our global land is being used to graze animals. And if that's not crazy enough, if we go up to the yellow section on the left, we see that 6% of all of our land is being used to grow crops to be used to feed animals that we will ultimately use as food. But on the right hand, we see that 4% of our global usable land is used to grow crops to feed humans directly. Now that same 4%, that same 4% of cropland that is used to grow crops to feed humans directly, it produces 1.35 gigatons of food for humans. But then let's go back one step and see that that 43% of land, which is 37% of the land used for grazing and 6% of the land that's used to grow crops to feed animals. So that's 43%. It produces 0.19 gigatons of food for humans. So that basically just means that we produce 7 times less food for humans on 11 times more land when animals are used as a food source. And that, my friends, I find, and I hope you do too, I find that outrageously wasteful. It is the most inefficient way of using our land, especially when we know that that grazing land could be rewilded and would be able to use, we would be able to sequester all of the carbon that we need to in that one. Next slide, please. So last year, we were all saddened by the number of wildfires that were burning all over the world. And the most dramatic one was the one in Australia, where it was estimated that more than 1,86,000 square kilometers, that's 46 million acres of land was burnt. And it burnt down, thousands of buildings, many people, human beings lost their lives. And we also estimated that there were more than 1 billion animals that were killed during those wildfires. And some of those animals, some endangered species, lost so many individuals that the species is functionally extinct now. So that's really, really sad. And it was a really huge tragedy. So as are the fires in the Amazon, which we talk about very often. But we must ask ourselves a question, and that's why don't we ever talk about what's happening right in front of us, right in our own home, right in India? Next slide, please. This is a satellite image that was taken by NASA in 2019. And it was during a 10-day period in May, a 10-day period in May 2019. And it basically shows that the entire planet is on fire. All the red that you see there are fires. Nearly all of those fires are human-induced. So oftentimes when a human-induced fire gets out of hand, you know, the winds are too heavy and stuff like that, and it gets out of hand, and then we start calling it a wildfire. But we can't forget that almost all of the wildfires were originally human-induced. So the great majority of all of these fires, all of this red, is made to clear land for animal agriculture, whether it's to graze animals or whether it's to make crops, to grow crops to feed animals, or grasslands to feed animals to graze them. So we were really appalled at, you know, we should have been, by what happened in Australia, the fires in Australia. But let's look at India in this chart. And this gigantic portion of India is just a bright, blazing red. A recent study has shown that forest fires in India have doubled in 1 year. And over 30,000 forest fires reported in India in 2019. Around 95% of those forest fires were on account of human activity, like inducing growth of grass for animal grazing. Next slide, please. So when we think of that slide that we just saw with the forest fires, and then we see this chart, there's something that we see very, very clearly in India. It's just as red as the one before. This is the global bovine density. So when we look at this chart, and we remember the chart that we saw beforehand, it's really hard to deny that there's not a direct correlation between the cattle population in India and the fires that are human-induced. Next slide, please. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, this is a report in 2020, so it's right here, right recent. India is home to the world's largest cattle population, and that's just cattle. So we're just talking about cows and buffaloes. We're not talking about any other lifestyle, the goats and the sheep and the other livestock. India has basically 3 times the cattle population of the United States, but it's only 1/3 the size. So that's why we talk about density of the cattle population. Next slide. So we can analyze milk production because, let's be honest, most of these cows are for dairy and buffaloes as well. So when we analyze milk production, we come up with some really startling figures. So if we base our numbers on just cow's milk, India is second to the United States. But if you base your numbers on cow and buffaloes together, then India is by far #1 in the world. So this image basically is a tiny bit dated because currently India is still #1, still the largest milk producing country, but it actually represents more than 22% of the global total milk production. That means that in India, there's close to 1/4 of the global milk production that is taking place. As well, India is also the world's largest dairy consumer, by far. Next slide, please. So another interesting chart that came from the University of Oxford study that was conducted by Joseph Poor, it showed the environmental impacts of different foods. And so let's look at the environmental aspects of one single food, and that is milk. And as we can plainly see, dairy milk has by far the most negative environmental impact, and whether that is on greenhouse gas emissions, land use, or water use, we have so many plant-based milk choices, so many. And, you know, all of them, let's just go back one step, we're not quite. Sanjeev, can we just go back to the slide before, please? Thank you. So, so as we see that there's that all of these different plant-based alternatives are significantly less impactful than the dairy milk choice. Okay, now we can go to the next one. So this is a slide that talks about global lactose intolerance. And funny enough, though India is this big milk consumer, between 60 and 80% of Indians are lactose intolerant. So what does that mean? Well, it means that 60 to 80% of Indians have diarrhea, abdominal pain, gas, and bloating after eating or drinking milk products. So let's ask ourselves a question. Why are we consuming something that we're actually not meant to consume? We can talk about why we're lactose intolerant after, if you'd like. But we're not meant to be consuming it. It only makes us sick, basically, while we are consuming it. We know that there's this environmental impact that's absolutely horrendous. But it's also a top contributor to many chronic diseases like reproductive cancers and type 2 diabetes and heart disease, etc. Next slide, please. Yet, despite all of that, despite the environmental damage and the fact that 60 to 80% of Indians are lactose intolerant and it's causing all sorts of diseases, the government has created schemes to propel livestock production to increase India's GDP. So, of course, it's very important, GDP. Of course, it's important that people earn a livelihood. But should people's livelihood come at the expense of our environment? I think it's a question that we all need to ask. Next slide, please. So the primary objective of Jeeva Bhavana is to help farmers transition from animal to plant-based agriculture. And we believe that that is really a holistic solution to healing India and, of course, the globe. So basically, this transition would be best for farmers who don't have to work in unhealthy conditions, who wouldn't have to work in unhealthy conditions. We don't have the time to talk about that either, but most of these farmers work in very unhealthy conditions. So they wouldn't have to work in these conditions. And also, these farmers would be able to earn a real livelihood, because we can't forget that these are failing industries. And the only reason that people still are earning money on them is because of the government subsidies. Without the government subsidies, these people would not be able to earn 1 rupee. They'd be losing money all the time. So it's best, as we've seen in the above presentation, it's best to mitigate climate change, and it's best for the environment for so many other reasons that we'd need another at least hour to talk about those. It's best, of course, for saving our natural resources, like our depleting water supply, when we know just how much water livestock, all of these animals that we're raising, how much water they drink daily. And of course, it's better it reduces completely the amount of waste produced by all of these farmed animals. And this waste actually goes into our soils, into our water supplies, and causes a tremendous number of diseases and eutrophication and all sorts of other things. It's best for our own health without a question of a doubt. So this transition can only be achieved, however, when we as individuals make the choice to shift our food choices. Next slide, please. So the solutions do seem so very basic and very easy to understand, and yet nothing seems to really be moving, certainly not as quickly as it should be moving, knowing that we are in a climate emergency and knowing that the solutions could be done, very quickly. So why is that? Why is that nothing seems to be actually happening? Well, the biggest obstacle is ignorance. It's just lack of awareness. It's just that most people don't know what we've tried to teach you in a very short time to inform you about. They don't know this information. And however, there are some people who do know this information, and they are just like this person in this photo here. They've got their head in the sand. They're burying their head in the sand voluntarily because they don't want to, they just don't want to make the required changes, as simple as that. And among those comfortably aware people very unfortunately, are the great majority of the environmental organizations, whether it's here in India or abroad. And that's where Jeeva Bhavana comes in. We have taken it upon ourselves to tell the truth to the public and to create a grassroots movement and aimed at systemic change. We see ourselves as facilitators. We want concerned individuals and organizations and experts, but all sorts of people who are working in the area of sustainability or who are just really passionate about saving our ecosystems and saving really ourselves basically and our ability to thrive and exist on this planet. So we want people to be able to join us and work with us to understand the science and to take food choices into account. So we understand that while our individual food choices are very, very important, we also need to have policy changes. We need to put pressure on the government for subsidies and things like that, for example. Our individual food choices, however, is where it all starts. Sanjeev, next one. So this is the best choice. This is what we hope that you are getting out of this slideshow, is that our mission is to empower you, to empower the public by informing you that chana is an amazing, it's just an amazing food. And it is basically plant-based foods are the choice and the best choice that you can make for yourself and for the planet. And you can make it 3 times a day, and you don't have to wait for government policies. You can just do it on your own. It's incredibly, incredibly simple, especially in India, because most of the traditional foods are plant-based, and they are also very, very nutritious. And also we can implement this change right starting from our next meal. We don't have to wait for anything. We can do it ourselves. It's very, very empowering to know that we have this power, again, in our own hands. And when we're doing these, when we're thinking about this, we shouldn't forget that India is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change. So we are in the front lines. You know, it's going to happen everywhere, climate change. It's already happening, as a matter of fact. But India is in a very, very vulnerable position. So by changing our eating habits and having other people changing their food choices, we will be able to help mitigate the climate change. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to leave you with a few documentaries that we suggest that you look at. These are 3 documentaries that we recommend. Now, some of you might have seen some of them. We will put the links, of course, for all of these documentaries in the chat box. So one of the things that I just really want to say about this is that though they were made in the United States and most of the information and most of the storylines are United States centered, please don't think that they don't have a relevance to India, to the situation in India. As we've seen in the slides beforehand with the cattle density and the milk production and the forest fires and things like that, these things are very, very relevant in India. So that's very important. But the other thing that I think is really important about these documentaries is it really, they impress upon us the necessity to have critical thinking, the need to have critical thinking, especially in this time when we are bombarded with every type of information from every type of source, you know, on the internet, on the television, and on newspapers and blogs, opinions, everything. We're just bombarded with information. And it's really important for important things, of course, is to be critical about it, to know where this information is coming from. So really one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is that when we're presented with information, when we're presented with research, we should really check out the source of that research, where that research is coming from. Sometimes an industry, for example, will say, because let me just go back 1 second, and that's that most of the information that we get now, especially in terms of our consumer habits, it comes from industry. So they are basically telling us what they want to tell us and what they hope that we will only take at their value. So the thing is that industries will say research shows that, you know, fill in the blank, or even more viciously, they will say research doesn't show any conclusive evidence or any conclusive correlation between this and that. This was something that was used to such an extent in the tobacco industry in the 50s and 60s. And they call it planting doubt. When you plant doubt into the consumer's brain, into their thoughts. Because basically, nobody wants to change bad habits, basically. We all want to be comforted in saying, oh, it's not so bad after all, right? So when you say, well, there's no conclusive evidence, then we think, okay, well, you know what, there's no conclusive evidence, so, you know, why should I stop? I mean, when we have conclusive evidence, then I will stop. So we have to really be careful about that. Because when we know where the research is funded, and that's really where we realize that 99% of all of the research is funded by industry itself. And there's a few names for that, my friends. The names are funding bias, sponsorship bias, funding outcome bias, and funding publication bias. And there's one word that we find in all of those little labels, and that's bias. So in other words, nearly all industries, including and especially the most harmful ones, they will say virtually anything for you to continue to buy their products. Be really careful. The last documentary that I want to, next slide please, is a documentary that has just come out. And this was released in May of this year. It's called Endgame 2050, and it was directed by a physician who turned environmentalist. Her name is Sofia Pineda Ochoa. And in the documentary, she explores what the near future, so this is 2050, it's in 30 years, it's very, very, very close, what the near future will look like if we stay on course, changing absolutely nothing, destroying our planet, and making it absolutely uninhabitable for us, for humans, but for the countless other species with whom we share the earth. She states, I made Endgame 2050 because I want people to wake up to the gravity of the situation before it's too late. But it's clearly not too late. And thus the film discusses what we can do now so that the scenario of the year 2050 in the film stays in the film and never becomes a reality. And with that, I'd like to ask Madhavi to take over and finish up the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie. So I'm going to again go back to missions of Jeeva Bhavana. And as we have discussed earlier in the presentation, our main objective is to help farmers transition from animal-based agriculture to organic, chemical-free, plant-based agriculture. And by this, we mean we want to educate the farmers and make them understand that animal agriculture is a failed system and it is existing only because of subsidies. And as regards empowering people about the detrimental effects, impacts of animal-based products, we want to empower the youth, especially with the correct information. And while people are awakened about the climate crisis and are pitching in to save the environment, who are trying to do their bit to save the river or move towards renewable energies, we want them to know that they have the opportunity to make the most significant step right now, which is to go vegan, and with a step which can be taken immediately without any policy requirements as discussed before. And as an NGO, as a responsible NGO, we are doing our own research. We are collecting data from government websites, but we are very keen on doing India-specific research and have it published. And we are willing to collaborate with interested institutions who want to take this aspect into account and do this work with us. Again, I'd like to stress on the fact that our organization is an umbrella organization to bring all the NGOs together because we understand the gravity of all the situations we are facing regarding the environment. We want to give a holistic solution, and the going vegan is again going to be the most significant step. So we want to get together the expertise of all the environmental organizations who are willing to take animal agriculture into account and reach this information to the public. So we'll be playing a role of facilitators, in effect. Next. And what are we doing to achieve this objective? So we have formed these task forces, some of which we had started implemented before the lockdown, some of them which were mulling over, working over. So we had, since we realized that people are very concerned about their own health, and this makes the connection. So we started health talks, which are called Choosing Good Health 3 times a day, and they've been appreciated. We have done these in communities, colleges, schools, and we look forward to doing more of these talks. We have roped in reputed nutritionists who are experts in plant-based nutrition. And similarly, we want to start interaction with farmers. We had started with my own village, and but because of the lockdown, we had to take a step. I mean, it has come to a standstill now, the work. But similar with the outreach, where we had made these brochures to meet people in public spaces and speak to them, hand over the information to them physically. But that again has gone on a back foot because of the lockdown. And now we realize the social media is a very effective tool to reach the information. And we are now looking for good graphic designers who will put up the information, which will have a good impression on the people, and they will be able to absorb it very easily. And most importantly, translations, because this organization is India centered, and we want the public of India to know what's happening and know the truth. And we want help to translate the information in local languages. Today we are having the Zoom meeting in English, but we really hope to have these in regional languages soon and go ahead. So this is what I wanted to say on behalf of Jeeva Bhavana. We want concerned citizens and passionate students to spare their time and lend their expertise to help us achieve the objectives. Next slide, Sanjeev. So there are some more links. There is so much information available about the multiple impacts of animal agriculture, whether it is about water use, whether it is world hunger, whether it is greenhouse gases. But all this information has not reached the public. So we have taken the responsibility of reaching out to the people, because we want to empower them and let them know that they have the ability to take control of their lives right now as soon as possible. So you can take a screenshot of these links, because they're very useful. And of course, the documentaries suggested by Julie are also from very authentic, reliable sources. So those who do not have the inclination to do so much research would want to know, they must definitely watch those documentaries. But we will always advise people to do their own research and get convinced rather than being told by someone to do something. Next, Sanjeev. And of course, by the end of the presentation, we hope that we have inspired you to take action, because Jeeva Bhavana is all about action. We believe that we should educate ourselves and take individual actions, because it's the best thing to do today, instead of being overwhelmed and feel helpless. Because all the people here, I'm sure they have understood the gravity of the situation of the climate crisis we're facing right now. So let us act instead of reacting. And those who are interested may please contact us on our Facebook page or our email address. I will type in our email address in the chat box, and we hope to get some involvement from people here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to us patiently. We are open to the questions now. Anybody has any questions?
We'll be happy to have questions either
Yes.
if you want to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Hi. Yes, ma'am. I've been on this journey. I'm in a transition phase. Ma'am, I've been researching quite a bit about it. And just a question like this, I've been asked many times, and I've been listening to many people following vegan. One answer I could not find is, ma'am, imagining a time when literally like mass majority of the people are turning vegan, and what happened to the dairy industry then? Yes, we definitely know that as on when the demand drops, so will the supply drop? But what will be the consequences of all the dairy industry, and how that transition phase will go on from so much dairy to plant-based? Like, what about the animals? So there will be goshalas and NGOs who will be trying to support and take care of them, but uh, how the millions or billions of uh, creatures will end up in a, like, in a more peaceful way, how they can live their life and then die naturally, then ending up in slaughterhouse. This is just a hypothetical situation. I know, like, uh, how much lack of awareness is there, and even if people are aware, due to their taste buds or selfish interest, they don't opt for this choice. But yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Shall I answer that one? Shall I?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Rohan. Hi. That's a very, very good question, and it's a question that we're asked very often. Whether it's, you're talking specifically about dairy, about cows, but we can ask it for about all other animals that we use, either for their milk or for their flesh or whatever. So the question is that we have to ask is, why do we have so many animals in the first place? There are not quite 8 billion people in the entire world, but we kill every year we slaughter more than 70 billion land animals, right? So how did we get this huge amount? So in India, as well as everywhere else, but in India, because that's really what we're talking about, if we have such a huge population of cattle, it's because we are artificially inseminating the cows. So these are not just cows who are out there and, their natural instinct is to mate with a bull and everything like that. These cows are being artificially inseminated in order to have, if we're talking about dairy especially, in order to have a baby, a calf, because only when a cow has a calf will she produce milk. It's, milk is basically the lactating, the lactation of a cow who has just had a baby, the way humans will also produce milk for their human babies when we have them. So basically, as the demand goes down, this is what we really believe. Right now we have this huge number, but as fewer and fewer people are asking for dairy, so they're going to be breeding fewer and fewer cows, right? It's not going to happen, unfortunately. We would love it to happen overnight, and tomorrow morning we wake up and we have an entire vegan world. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a little bit more slow than that. So as people start drinking their plant-based alternatives, then they're going to be breeding fewer and fewer cows. And unfortunately, those cows now will end up going to slaughter. They will. It's a terrible system that we put in place, and we can't save, unfortunately, all of these cows. But they're not going to be replaced every year and grown in terms of their herd number. And in that case, when there's no more real demand for cow's milk, there probably won't be that many cows anymore, because the numbers will not have been bred. In that case, what we do hope is it will be the same thing for our cats and our dogs and other animals that we love and that are part of our family members, and that those animals will find shelter in the shop or in a type of sanctuary. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Your voice, Julie, your voice is choppy. Can you check your microphone?
My voice is breaking?
Yes.
Oh, I can't hear you.
No?
Maybe you can try without microphone, without the earphones. No.
Okay, well, you know what? I don't know. Is this okay? Madhavi, you might want to speak instead of me.
Yeah, but till then, maybe you want to not use the microphone. Yeah, just remove it and see. Can you talk now? Okay. So Rohan, have you
Answering your
understood?
question, yeah, sorry, Madhvi, yeah,
Yeah,
you
no,
wanted to say.
Sanjay, you can Sanjeev, you can take it. Yeah.
One more point to your answer to your question, Rohan, is that currently we are exporting a lot of milk. India is exporting a lot of milk. You know, it's like if you go to the sites and check, it's like exports are almost in the ranges of hundreds, right? So I think even if we stop exports, I think that would reduce the number of cows. I mean, we are just putting more and more cows so that we can export more.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but
I guess,
those cows are being exported mainly because of the dairy industry, you know.
yeah, that's what I'm
Uh,
saying.
right,
No,
yeah.
I'm saying about milk
So you can hear
export.
me again. You
Yeah.
can hear me again.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, it's true, it's true. I mean, India until last year was the largest exporter of beef, you know,
Yeah.
and
Setting
that's
aside,
cows. Yeah, yeah, really very
Maharashtra is
expensive.
producing an excess milk production of 10 lakh
Right.
liters.
So, with your kind
Also,
permission, if I can ask another question.
Yeah, sure.
of course.
Ma'am, we have about 100 cows at my farm. So we have a family business, and this is not basically a source of economy for us, like not commercial basis. So my grandfather is very fond of cows. So there are about 50 cows that literally do not give milk, and they have got very old. So we have just kept them. We do not tie them. It's an open area where they can roam around. We just take care of them. Other 50 give milk. We consume, and excess milk is given to dairy, but we do not give any kind of oxytocin injections for increasing the milk production, and that is selling is just for making it a little sustainable. So that is not for that is not the source of income for us. We have a good business. Today we are able to. I do not support the fact that dairy is good, or there is any kind of milk like ahimsa milk. That's definitely there. Consuming it is definitely wrong. But at the same time, if we do not take care of those cows, we know how the conventional dairy industry uh, is there. So we tie them only for 10 minutes just to take the milk. Uh, their babies do drink milk. Once I just been to farm, and I just asked that what will happen if we don't take that milk. So he told that if the baby drinks excess milk, he will probably get loose motions. That has happened in past. Um, I spoke to, ma'am, you don't remember, but I've spoke to you about this year in Jan on WhatsApp, and I
Mm-hmm.
also spoke to Darshana ma'am. So she just suggested me that just leave the baby and cow together and just see if the baby really falls ill. I
Mm-hmm.
regret to share that I'm still not completely vegan in spite of knowing all the facts. It's been more than a year that I've left completely dairy that's outside my house. But in the house, there is a lot of friction in the family. Like they are not, they have this constricted mind that ghee, milk, and Krishna and all these things. And from where will you get all your nutrients and all stuff? I put down a bit of weight. That's not necessarily due to this reason, but due to all those, what we say, restrictions, I would say, it's my fault that I could not convince them. And the reason is because I don't have enough knowledge of the nutrition and how I'm going to support my diet without this. That is the only thing. I've started my research also about lymphatic systems, and I also watch what the health. I made my brother watch, and he was shocked to know all that. Yeah, that's all I have to share. But if this if we do not take care of those cows, so definitely they will end up somewhere else. And we know the
No, you're
consumption.
absolutely, it's fantastic that you're taking care of these cows. But again, I mean, I think that what we can do, if you'd like, Rohan, we could have just a, you know, with Sanjeev and Madhavi and myself and you, we can have our own little meeting together if you'd like to. We'd love to be able to talk to you really one-on-one on this, you know. But let's just get back to the fact that what you said, I think, is very, very true, that you need to know the facts. You have to look into it. If it's something that's really important to you, for example, how do I get my nutrition? We can, you know, get in touch with Sharon, for example. Sharon, SH, they're one of our partners, and they're doing extraordinary work. They've been doing it for many, many years about nutrition. How do we make sure? Now, we have to, we just, the thing is that we have been basically brainwashed to believe that we need these products. But remember the thing I told you about not 60 to 80% of Indians that are lactose intolerant? That really means that it's not meant for us. You know, if we're lactose intolerant, it just means that we shouldn't be drinking it. We don't have the enzyme any longer because we're weaned from our mother's breast milk. So because we don't have that enzyme, our body just naturally stopped. We didn't say turn off the lactase. It just did it because we were weaned and our body stops producing the enzyme. So when we're eating something that our body is not able to even digest, and I'm not saying that you have that problem, but so many people do, we have to just kind of take a step back and think, well, if we're not supposed to be eating it, however, the calf is, because the calf, first of all, it's the calf's milk, right? The cow is producing the milk for her calf, but the calf has all of the lactase necessary and can digest everything perfectly because that is what her or his mother milk is, right? Yeah. But so I would suggest really you've got a lot of questions, and there might be other questions that people have that are, you know, that we want to give everybody a chance to ask their questions, but please come back with us and let's try and talk about this for a longer period of time, because you've asked a lot of really very interesting questions. And I think you've come up with the answer, which is educate yourself, really understand that. But we can give you as many sources and resources that you need, and we can help you, really. We'd be really happy to. We'd be really happy to.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Great seeing you. There were some questions also in the chat box, or does anyone else have a question who's in the audience that wants to speak?
Sanjeev, you want to say the question?
There's a question from Chinu. She says,
Echo.
Okay, I'm sorry, Sanjeev.
So should I say this question for Chinu, what Chinu has said?
Yeah.
Chinu is a 12-year-old child, and he says, I would like to know what I can do as an individual.
Okay, so that is great. And there's also Vaishali, which is kind of similar. She's 11 years old. And Niraja. It's Niraja. Okay, yeah. And if I choose to be a vegan, then how shall I get my proteins and that I get from milk? Okay, yeah. So Madhavi, Sanjeev, do you want to?
Yeah, Chinu,
you person too, because she has children and she will know exactly.
Yeah. So Chinu, the best thing as a child you can do right now, and a very significant step you can take right now, is go in for a plant-based diet, especially because you're a child and there's so much more happening in the outside world. But really, we're giving you a tool to empower you right now at this small age, and we can help you. You can get in touch with us separately. Maybe you can email us with the help of your mother, and we will guide you to make the transition. Yes.
And a really good thing to do as well is to watch those documentaries with your parents, to watch them with your parents so that they understand the reason that you want to make this switch. And very often, you know, parents will be very, very supportive, and oftentimes they will actually decide to make the switch themselves. And entire families, we see this so often, that entire families decide that, you know, they want to do this as a family. It's a family project. It's they realize that it's best for everyone. It's best for the kids. It's best for the parents, for the health, for the environment, because you're young, and we want to make sure that you have a wonderful world when you get older, you know, and that we take care of this world, so that when you get a little bit older and you decide to have kids of yourself, your own, if you decide, that they too will be able to have a very, very good future. So it's a really great decision.
And Neerja is asking for source of protein instead of milk. So Julie, you want to take it? Yeah.
So milk, you know, the thing is with milk is that milk does have protein, but it's not good protein. Basically, the protein that comes from all animals, whether it's milk, whether it's meat, whether it's egg, all of those proteins, if it comes in an animal, from an animal, it will also have things like cholesterol and saturated fats. It will not have any fiber. It won't have anything else that is really, I mean, it will have so many other things that are actually harmful. And calcium, protein from milk it's really not the best source, actually. There are so many different sources of protein, especially like lentils and legumes and lots of green leafy vegetables. Basically, every single food item has protein in it. But peanuts are like this magical food that people don't think about, because peanuts, because they're just so humble and they're not expensive. They are filled with protein and fiber and other good things. So there's a really, really, really huge number, especially in India, of very inexpensive ways and delicious ways of having good protein, and it doesn't come with the bad stuff as well. Again, you can look at Sharon. Sharon has all sorts of things about nutrition. It's really an excellent. Madhavi, do you want to put that up in the group? You can find their website from jeevabhavana.org, and if you look at our partners. But Madhavi is going to also put this in the chat, and it's excellent for nutrition. Really, really excellent. Any other? Have we answered questions? If we haven't answered your questions, please let us know. And if you have other questions, we are here for them.
Yeah, and Sumita has asked me to share how my children are vegan and what are the ages. So yeah, thank you, Sumita. That's a wonderful thought. I have two boys. One is 16 and the other one is 11. And they both have been plant-based for the past 2 years properly. Like, I was also hesitant. I've been through stages where I was confused about the nutrition. But once I got to know that all plant-based foods have protein in them, I didn't have to worry about that at all. And the fact about milk, I was confused about milk for a year. And then I realized milk is not a food which needs to be given every day, actually, because there's protein coming from other sources of plant-based foods. So they both are players. My older son is a football player, and my younger son is also a very active child. And we begin our day with a lot of fruits, and we have a lot of vegetables. Though my younger son is fussy about vegetables, but he does like a lot of fruits, and he likes lentils. And this is how we go about our day. And it's all with good understanding. They connect with me, they understand what I'm saying, and they do try to apply their minds. And when in school they're teaching them that meat is a source of protein, they're so disappointed. So they tell their teacher in the class, I don't get my protein from animal foods, I'm getting it from plants. So they're very honest about it when they're interacting with people as well. So yes. So I'm sure the children will feel empowered when they see the films and they get the information.
Rohan asked about soy. Okay, so soy is it's true that Rohan asked what amount of soy is okay for men. Well, the thing is that because soy, everyone says it contains estrogens, and estrogens are female hormones. But the thing is that soy actually contains phyto. So phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. It will do absolutely no harm in any way, shape, or form to men. You won't have any secondary effects. Soy is one of the best, not GMO, please, no chemical soys, but soy is one of these miracle foods. It's very high in protein, it's high in fiber, it's got lots of calcium in it. It's an amazing product, and you can't even eat too much, really. There's no limit, whether you're a man for a woman or a woman. That has been debunked. And again, this is a very perfect example of the industry wanting people to think that they can only get their protein from animal products or their calcium from milk, dairy milk. And they have really done, well, there's those estrogens, and estrogens for men, they cause this and they cause that. It's been debunked 1,000 times.
So there's a question from Ramesh. Ramesh wants to ask a question.
Yeah, please speak, Mr.
Yeah, I just want to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Can go ahead.
Yes. Okay. See, I just want to say that this is quite an interesting topic, and I had a brief discussion with Madhavi some time ago, and since then it has been there on my mind. I think we need to be able to bring these thoughts to a bigger audience, and I was just wondering how we can do it. One is approach the government. We can go and conduct a presentation, or we can even prepare a documentary, show it to the government. We could introduce this topic in schools and colleges, so that over a period of time, the awareness levels increase, and that is how we could this movement could catch momentum. So that these are some of the things I'm available in. If you think that any such, if I can contribute in this way, we can conduct lectures in colleges. But then I'm thinking of going to a bigger audience, something like TED Talks, for example. If somebody can do that, or meet the government, or conduct presentations, have some seminars. If I'm open to such ideas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're
Thank you.
really
Thank you.
happy to see your enthusiasm, and we have considered all these options what you have just mentioned. And if we need your help, we'll definitely connect with you. In the meanwhile, if you have any substantial platform, do let us know, because we are reaching out to communities and colleges where we have a large audience. And yes, we are kind of getting support, but not always. So if we have recommendations where we'll definitely get the platform, we'll be very happy to do a talk or a presentation. So yeah,
we can get together whenever you'd like. We can do a brainstorming session together.
Yes.
This happens. We do this quite often, actually, as we get together with people. We're just there and we feed off of each other. This is what synergy is all about, right? So thank you so much for your suggestions. And if you're so enthusiastic about it, we're thrilled to have you, work with us, really.
Okay. Fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Arjun is asking a question: what is our opinion on GM food, and can GM food help reduce the bad effect on climate change?
There I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Is it the GMOs, genetically modified foods? Is that what you're talking about?
It must be that, yeah. GM is,
yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. I've got so many opinions about it, but I don't know, maybe Sanjeev or Madhavi wants to talk about
We'd prefer you to take this question, because you would do more justice.
Okay, so I don't know where why do you think it would be interesting? Can you where are you? And can you put yourself on the microphone and we can talk for a second? Because I'd like to know where you, if you've heard, if you know where you might have heard or where you've gotten this idea that GMOs could be actually a way of fighting climate change. And I don't know if that's. Are you here? Pardon? Can you hear me? You can't hear me anymore?
Yeah, we can, but it's choppy.
It's choppy. I'm so sorry. It's my, yeah. Okay, well, can you hear me now? Is it okay now?
Yeah, you can talk, you can carry on. Maybe it will, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think it must be my connection. I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
So I will just tell you since, so GMOs are very dangerous. They are incredibly, incredibly dangerous in all sorts of ways. And what they are doing is, where there's a feedback. GMOs, in my opinion, they are to be avoided absolutely. They are being touted as, and this again, this is industry that is showing us this is the best way, it's climate change resistant and things like that. GMOs basically have created a devastating atmosphere, whether it's for our soils, because of course GMOs, you need to have very specific herbicides, right? They've planted a gene inside these seeds so that they're resistant to a particular herbicide. So the idea is that it's going to kill all of the weeds and the insects and things like that, but it's not going to affect the plant. So you can imagine what you're doing already in the plant, in the seed, right, to that level. But then what we end up doing is we ravage the soils. We're absolutely taking any type of fertility in the soils, and it's just being zapped by all of these things. And one of the big things with environmental degradation is that it actually erodes topsoils. So if you have eroding top plus a chemical topsoil inside of it, basically you have no way to grow things. Things become totally sterile. You can't grow anything in these places. So that's a big, big, big problem with GMOs. There's lots of other problems as well in that it's really taking the sovereignty of farmers away from them. Before, I mean, forever and ever and ever, farmers saved seeds from 1 year, 1 harvest, and they saved a certain amount of seeds in order to plant them the year after. And this way they were totally independent, and they would share seeds with one another. Seed sharing has been around since the beginning of agriculture, because of course you need to rotate crops and things like that. So they would share them with one another. But basically were sovereign, they were independent. Now you have these companies, whether it's Monsanto or others, that are selling these GMO, so these modified that cannot be saved. They cannot be recuperated. They cannot be used at the end of the season. First of all, they're basically, they can't be reused. They're used for 1 season. So, and then at the second one, you know, if you do use them, if you're able to recuperate them, then they usually sue you because you're supposed to only plant them 1 time. So it really has created a tremendous stress on farmers. It's created a tremendous stress on our soils. And we don't have the amount of time really to see if they're not really wreaking damage in our bodies as well. So personally, GMOs for me are to be totally, totally avoided, you know, boycotted completely. That's my opinion. Is there a rebuttal, or is there something else that you wanted to talk about in terms of GMOs, or I don't know? Shall we move on to another question?
So here's another question saying, should we use modern machines or conventional methods to grow and harvest food grains?
again, this is something, and of course, I mean, farming is basically the tractors. You're talking about, when you're saying conventional machines, you're talking about big tractors and things like that. Is that what you mean? I don't know, but if that's what you mean, the big tractors and these big machines that we have built and everything, there's lots of problems with that as well. Yeah, okay, Arjun, thank you. So the big problems with that is that they compact the soil. So it's really bad for the soil, these big machines. They're horrible for the soil. There's actually now more and more evidence that the best way to grow, when you have decent soil, of course, if you're growing it in the sand, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And we are depleting our soils at such a great rhythm because of, a lot of it is because of animal agriculture and pesticides and other things that we're doing in the soil. But when you have a decent soil, what we have found now, and there's more and more evidence, that the technique for planting is called no-tilling. It's basically just sprinkling. You don't need to deep down and have these, big furrows where you're planting very deeply. It's not really the best method, as we are finding more and more evidence. So again, but all of this really, when we talk about these types of methods, and we talk about, seed sovereignty, and when we talk about no-tilling, what we're talking about also is changing the way that we look at agriculture, which is now still, in India, maybe less so than other parts of the country, but in India, I have seen, because I've been in rural areas for so long, and I see these mega farms, these huge tracts of lands, whereas before, even 20 years ago, when I started to really travel extensively in the countryside, they were small plots of land. They were really small acreages that people were able to manage without machinery. And so I think that is something that would have to go hand in hand, really, with these different methods, is to ennoble the farmers, because they are providing us with a vital service. They're the ones who are growing the things that are nourishing us. And to actually really make agriculture a very noble profession, because it is. It's really giving it back its nobleness. And multiplying the number of smaller landowners that can be well compensated. So, yeah, that's what I think about big machines.
There's one more question.
Also,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and I just want to say one last thing, because this is something that I think is really important. I almost forgot about it, is that let's not forget that these big machines, they cost a lot of money. People have to take these extraordinary loans out from the bank, and they spend the rest of their lives paying off loans from the bank. So even the money, if they are making it, if they're lucky enough to make it because there hasn't been a drought that has completely decimated their harvest, or there haven't been floods that have done the same thing, they're paying most of the money, most of the income back to the bank. And farmer suicides are a big problem in India, in Maharashtra, it's the Latur area is Marathwada, I think, is the suicide capital of the world. And a lot of that is because of bank loans. So machinery is bank loans. We want people to be independent. We don't want people to be dependent, whether it's on the government, whether it's on the banks. They should be able to be self-sufficient.
Shall I say another question?
Sure.
Yeah. So Isha is asking, I wanted to ask about the harmful effects of specific crops that have emerged due to the shift to veganism. I heard about farmers who are forced to grow land-degrading crops like quinoa or oats that aren't native to their land. What crops shouldn't be eaten so as to not contribute to a labor-intensive process?
So again, I'm sorry to say this, because I don't want you to think that this is just a one answer to everything. But again, vegans are barely 1% of the entire world population. So it's not really vegans that are changing the land use. Most of the people who eat quinoa are not vegans. Most of the people who are eating oats are not vegans. it's true that there are certain crops that, you know, it's the same thing with my voice is cracking. My voice is cracking. Sorry. Okay, I will, is it still cracking?
Yes, it is. It'll just go on its own.
Okay, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
it's fine now.
Okay. So, did you hear? I'm not sure. Were you
Yes.
able to hear what I said? Okay. So the thing is that it's really easy, and people love to do it. They love to bash vegans, right? As if vegans are the ones who are running the economy. Believe me, if it was vegans who were running the economy, it would be totally different already. So, you know, we talk about the avocados here in Europe. It's always the avocados, the avocados, the avocados, because avocados are very water intensive and vegan, so many avocados, but you know, again, it's not just vegans. So I think that's really interesting is that, for example, soy is it's just an amazing crop. Groundnuts, they are amazing crops. These are crops that are indigenous to India. We have been growing in India, and it's so good for the soil. You know, all of these types of crops are amazing for the soil. They do. You can't hear me? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but now again now we can hear.
Okay, yeah, I'm so sorry. So the thing is that in India itself, we do have a panoply of different types of crops that we can use that are excellent for the soil, that just keep on putting the necessary, you know, nutrients, the potassium and the nitrogen and things like that back into the soil, and that also are excellent for our health. So that's about all I can say. There's a huge now with, I think we have to worry much more about food sovereignty. And when we stop exporting so much of what we are growing in India just for cash and start really growing things in India for Indians first, right? I mean, let's not forget that, I forgot the number, but a great percentage of the malnourished and people who are actually dying of hunger are still in India. So how can we be exporting all of this meat and all of this, you know, these animals and exporting all of this grain when already at home we have so many people who are malnourished and who are dying of hunger? So I really, really believe that one of the things that we really must insist on is that the food that we grow in India, that most of it stays in India, and that we find the necessary things that are the most nutritious where everybody can eat. And that happens to be plants, you know, and are excellent, excellent plants that are excellent for the soil and that don't require, you know, huge amounts of lands. Does that answer the question? Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else?
No more questions. No more questions, I think.
No more questions?
Okay, looks like the questions are over.
Okay, I'm just gonna look. Okay.
Somebody said hello?
Yeah, that's me,
Hello.
Chaya. Hi.
Oh,
Trying to start my
hi,
video.
Chaya.
Oh.
Hi. Thank you, girls, and Sanjeev for a wonderful presentation. What has happened to the video? I don't know. I think you can see some chairs instead of my face.
Okay.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
totally
Yeah, what?
disappeared in the chairs, Chaya.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Okay, I'll switch it off. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Just wanna
Yeah,
say
hi.
thank you so much. And since we're having such an open discussion, I want to share my predicament was almost quite identical to Rohan, who spoke earlier, you know, living with the family and trying to convince the rest of them. And that makes me really feel quite sad, you know. So I'm trying, but it is so difficult to convince those that are set in their ways traditionally. You know, my parents are almost, you know, average age 80, and they will not budge. So I'm thinking I'll just give up on those two, but I'll try and concentrate on the younger generation. But all the slides that I've seen now are so precise, and you've made all the information so concise that I can share it with the younger lot in my family. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chaya. Thank you. And
Thank
well,
you.
it'll be on our website and things like that. And we
Yeah.
hope that we're going to be able to have you with us.
Yeah,
Interact a little bit more
definitely.
with us. It'll be really, really
Yeah.
great. I just want to say one thing about that is that family, they are the hardest people to convert. I hate that word, but that's what we have to use.
Yeah.
It's the hardest because they're the people who we love the most, and they're too
Yes.
close to us, and so it's really hard. Sometimes what happens is that, as you said, your parents are, much older, and that's also really hard.
So difficult.
So,
So
yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah.
waste my energy there, but I'd
Don't.
like to put it towards some more, constructive work.
Great,
But,
great.
good on you, all of you. Thank you so much. I can see the great effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaya.
Thank you for joining us, Chaya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we still have a few people there. Anyway, if there's any more questions, we're still here. We'd love to be able to answer them. And if not,
Or any feedback about our presentation, even that will do.
Feedback, yeah. We would love to have feedback as well.
Yeah.
And
so if you're done, we can call it.
anything I can do. So Chino just anything I can do to influence my peers.
What's to film with them?
So I think that the best way to influence your peers is to be an example. Is to be an example, is to just, eat well, be well, feel good, and show how you can thrive. You can be in great, shape and everything. Allow the compassionate part of you, because that's probably something that that affects you a lot. The fact that you don't want to participate in the harm toward animals who've done nothing at all for this, who don't deserve this at all. So probably that motivates you as well. And I think that when you're an example to them, and then the questions come up, and then you can talk to them, as a peers, as a friends, as people, well, I've been doing this. Yeah, it's because I saw this, or I learned this, or, I saw this amazing documentary, or there are some really, really good YouTube channels for kids that are much more, they're less on the environmental aspect of it. It's more about animals, animal rights, that I can also share with you, or you might know. Do you know Bite Size Vegan, Chino? Have you heard of Bite Size Vegan? I'm going to just write it down here. Okay. I don't know the website, the YouTube. It's a YouTube. It's called Bite Size Vegan. Okay. You just look this up on YouTube. Okay. Bite Size Vegan. Oh no, I didn't get that. I'm sorry. I have to do it to everybody. Sorry. I'm writing it again. Sorry. Okay, it's called Bite Size Vegan. It's she hasn't put any videos out in a couple of years, but her work is amazing. She's a young American woman who's passionate and who's got a whole series of really, really great short YouTube little videos that are aimed for younger people. And everything. She's got a tremendous amount of compassion, and she speaks really, really well to younger people. So I really would check her out. And these are things that, if you have friends who are interested, then let's look at a video or two. And it's a really, really great way to engage with videos. And good luck. Please keep in contact, because Vegan Evan is absolutely amazing. Yeah, he's really, really great. But see, Vegan Evan has done just small, really small things. He's there and everything like that. But it's true that $1 Million Vegan, they have lots of what is it called? The Child Vegan Hero Kids. Yeah, it's called Vegan. Okay, my voices again. I'm writing this in the chat box.
Questions, you can
Yeah. Go to the next question. Yeah, go to the next question.
No, Sanjeev, your voice is also. Type it.
I said Sanjay was.
Can't understand anything.
Okay. Can you hear me again?
Sanjay had a question. Yeah. Sanjay, please say your question.
Hello. No, I had a comment to make that yes, we needed such kind of work to be done in India, and I'm glad that you people have started it, doing it, and I'm sure many NGOs would take this into consideration and will help you in this research work. And I'm sure within a span of span of time, you will come up with some research which is India based and which will open an eyes for the world.
Yeah.
So I'm sure this will go on to become a big, not an event, but big thing to actually, based upon people will go on researching more and more in various parts of India.
Yeah. And
Thank you very
Sanjay, yeah, and Sanjay, you being in the medical field, we'll be happy if you open some avenues for us to raise awareness amongst the medical professionals.
Sure. There has to be some collaboration amongst nutritionists, physicians, and probably oncologists and gastroenterologists to get into this, the actual deep root cause for various diseases.
Yeah. Yes, we will. So we will collaborate on this and we'll do this. Thank you.
We have
Thank you.
Yogesh. Does he have a question?
Who? Yogesh?
Yeah, there's somebody called Yogesh.
Anybody called Mr. Yogesh has a question? You can speak up.
No, he was on the call, so I thought maybe he might have a question. He's still on the call.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I think that we can call it a, oh, here we go. No, you don't have one. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. So I think we can call it an evening.
Yes. So all those who are here till the end with us, thank you so much for listening to us so patiently. And if you haven't got any question right now, but something occurs to you, please write to us to our email address, which I put in the chat box. And yes, it was lovely talking to you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Sanjeev and Julie will meet briefly on Skype right now.